Today, I'll be showing you how to make amazing acoustic panels for your home studio. Before we get started, we need to discuss some theories so we know what's going on with our materials. Here I have a chart from Engineering Toolbox where it shows some materials, and the coefficient we're interested in is this thing called sound absorption coefficient. Just the basic theory behind it is it goes from 0 to 1. As the number gets closer to 1, it means that the material is better at absorbing sound. From this chart, we see that fiberglass has the best absorption coefficient of close to 1 at all frequencies, which is great, but fiberglass does have some health hazards to the user, so we're going to try to find something that's similar to that. And you could tell here that if your walls are roughly wood or plywood, you have an absorption coefficient of 0.1, which is pretty trash, and you have a lot of reverb when you're trying to mix songs or do recordings. So the reason why we want a material close to fiberglass is to reduce those reverbs as much as possible. And the whole reason why we want to lower this absorption coefficient, or I should say have a material that absorbs these frequencies, is we want to minimize the reverb in our rooms. So that's why we want a material that will get us close to 1. Before making my own, I just thought of buying some, and the first thought I had was, how good are these in absorbing sound? If I'm paying for something, I want to make sure it's good. And so I found some studies that looked at polyurethane, which is what this foam is made from, and the density they looked at was roughly of 25 kilograms per meter cubed. And on this chart, all they did was they tested the absorption at different frequencies. Polyurethane does pretty good at the higher end of the spectrum, but looking down here, it doesn't perform very good. And the line we're looking at is this 50 millimeter, which is roughly 2 inches, and the Amazon's density is fairly close to the value they studied, so I would say it's fairly accurate. But there are materials that do a better job at this low end, and I'll show you one example. After doing my YouTube research, I did find this material called rock wool, which is very similar to fiberglass, but is much safer. These values are from the manufacturer, and just look at the 250 hertz, it absorbs roughly 0.96. Now, comparing that back to acoustic foam, look at the 250 range. It's doing pretty bad. So this rock wool is a much better material for absorbing at all ranges, even at 125 hertz, which is great. So originally I did have a different support for the panels, but when I got to the store, I saw how expensive wood was, so I had to get a little creative. And also my car's tiny, so that was another constraint I had to get over. And so what I decided going with was with these 1 inch by 3 inch 6-foot boards. Each panel took 2 to make, and nothing went to waste. So the first thing I did is, from one side I measured 47 inches, and the remaining little section I measured out 16 inches and a half, and that left me with a little tiny piece like that. And I cut that in half and used that for the supports to hold the insulation. Beforehand, I was gonna just have another piece go out the bottom, but it would have risen the cost a little bit more, so I had to get a little creative. And also, it's good to have these little square boxes to staple down whatever fabric you're gonna use, so I had to get a little creative with that. So finally, we're gonna get to some interesting stuff, is how much did it cost me. So in total, here's just a material list I had. I used, it took me 20 boards because I made 10 panels. I needed to get nails, staple gun, handsaw, wood glue, staples, these things called monkey hooks, the tapestries to make them look pretty, the rock wool panels, and roughly I spent $193.82. Finally, the moment of truth. So after totaling all of my expenses and dividing it by the 10 panels I made, each one came to roughly $19.38. This cost can go down. I probably would have had a price of roughly $16 to $15 if I would have had the tools to begin with, and also if I didn't use these tapestries. Each tapestry gave me roughly the coverage for 3 panels, but if you want to go cheaper, you could just use any type of fabric you have laying around and that cost goes to zero. I just chose to use tapestries because if I'm gonna have them hanging in the walls, I want something pretty to look at, you know? And comparing the panels I made to what Amazon sells, there are these higher quality, nice looking panels. This one's roughly 24 inches by 48 inches and 2 inches thick, and they sell for almost $60. The difference between mine and theirs is theirs is a little bit wider, but mine is almost an inch thicker, which gives better absorption qualities. But if you really don't care how it looks and just try and get something, you could go with these Amazon super basic panels that are super tiny and are 2 inches thick. So to compare all of them, I think the best thing to do is a price per square inch, and if you do that to all of them, Amazon is the best choice, these cheap ones. But remember, these are polyurethane. And going back to our chart, polyurethane doesn't do too well at the low end, where rock wool does. So I would say that the price increase, which is very little, is worth the investment. So down below in the description, I'll have all the links to the research I did, and don't forget to subscribe.